The Ranting Geeks Pondercast.
Okay, everybody, welcome to the Ranting Geeks Pondercast number two. And this is actually episodes 4 through 9 of Andor season two, which is a lot of material. We kind of skipped a session for just 4, 5, 6, and now we're going to do 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, which is just before the last three episodes of Andor season two, which will be airing in a couple of days.
Yeah, welcome
So,
to the Pondercast. Let's get ponderous. Wait, no, that's not
yeah.
right.
So we have the usual cast of characters. I'm Mensa Boy, and we have
Legend
Fancy
Maker.
Legend Maker.
Phantom 6.
Rex Quasar!
That's it.
Yeah.
And
So
I
this is a
I
lot
tried to
of
be funny with
material.
mine and got like some demonic reference on mine, so I
The
won't do that
meat.
again.
So Andor, yeah. So this is five a lot of episodes. 2 years, 3 years before Battle of Yavin, 2 years before Battle of Yavin, and I guess for me the headline on all this is kind of the build up to the catastrophe on Gorman and the
So I was
massacre.
yeah, and watching through these things, I found myself coming to a greater understanding of what Rex was getting at last time. It was like, and in fact, I was watching it and I was thinking to myself, they're really expecting us to hold on to a lot of narrative threads here as they lead to the place where they all come together. And it started feeling like even I knew what was going on, and it started feeling a little bit confusing. Although I tracked it and I still enjoyed it, I started feeling that it's like, okay, wow, this is a whole lot of build up and a whole lot of details. When are we going to
Well, to
bring it
be
together?
honest, though, I kind of felt like a lot of it wasn't important enough for me to remember. And maybe that was just me because I know, like when you guys are watching it, you're trying to get every single detail and remember every character name and remember all. And I'm just sort of, okay, they're talking. I'm going to get to my iPhone here for a second. Oh, okay, something important's happening. Um, it, and then there'll be like a long scene with Saw, and he's sniffing gas or something out of the exhaust pipe. And I'm like,
Oh, yeah.
okay, I'm going to get back to my iPhone here because there's nothing really that important. He's just a psycho, so with a weird
Well,
hairdo.
Well,
well, I think
you've got
in
a
it,
luxury of 12 hours of canvas to paint on, which can have a lot of beats and a lot of slowdowns, and we're, in a world of do everything right away. So for me, this is like kind of taking your time and enjoying a long meal as opposed to like just an hour and a half or 90 minute or a two
Well,
hour
like I
movie.
say, yeah, it was designed to be as a soap opera. So it's following a
Absolutely.
lot of soap opera conventions. The pacing, and I've written soap opera scripts before. That
Yeah.
sucks because you really have to drag the thing out.
Well,
well,
you
I
know,
Well,
mean, I
I
would.
think it's
It's
starting to
there's
pay off though. Like episode nine, not to jump to the end, but episode nine was a lot of action and a lot of resolution and
Yeah,
very satisfying for me, at
Well,
least.
it had to be because those, I mean, these next six episodes were certainly better than the first
yeah.
three episodes, and they definitely moved the story along forward. But there were so many missed opportunities to focus on the things that really matter in this particular story. And instead of just, diving deep and wasting those first three episodes, they should have really focused on how the rebellion factions were either formed or how they were starting to be brought together.
I'm
None of
hoping there's
that.
some more of that coming.
Yeah, I know, but it's kind of so we have
Yeah,
a lot to talk about
I've
because there
lost
are.
my expectation of that. I don't think they're not gonna go. What they're giving you is what they want to give you. They want to, it's basically a character drama. They don't, their priority isn't to show you how the rebellions got together and the logistics and all of that. That's not what the writers are trying to do is just like what a soap opera tries to do. It's basically about character dramas and, oh my God, you're leaving. I'm going to miss you. And I better not tell them I'm leaving. And I'm
Well, I
going on
mean,
a mission and not telling,
they
it's all
nipped
that kind
out
of stuff.
two they nipped
That's
out two
missed.
major characters, so that's two narrative threads that they don't have to mess with anymore.
Yeah,
Well,
but they have to clear the board because they still have other characters that are central to Rogue One that
Yeah,
they
and
you
I,
need
w-
to
just
Yeah.
bring
I will
in.
say that that K2SO's introduction was just about perfect.
yeah, that was great. And
Oh, Highly, let me tell you, highly controversial because there are discontinuities between how K2SO came into this TV series and how he actually met Cassian and they got together in the comics. There was a dedicated one-shot comic that was done years ago, and it kind of told that story. So a
Well,
lot of the Star Wars Legends purists are in an uproar
and
because they
there was
who
another
cares?
storyline that was written that had the K2O's entrance into the story arc as almost an alien. It was like almost a full on horror story. I was reading a little bit about it. It never came to pass, obviously. And but I will say that now that I've said, yeah, it was almost perfect. Okay, it was, but it wasn't, because it still left me wondering, oh, wait a minute. It was this big lumbering Terminator, and then now suddenly it's a smartass, and how'd that
Well,
happen?
you know,
they don't
there's an element of creative license there. I think also you've got there was one little hint that he might be a little different because when Cyril goes into that room and the six KX droids are sitting there, one of them
He
turns
kind
and
of looks up and
looks at
studies
him.
him.
That
Yeah.
was
That was
K2. That was
creepy.
the one that would become K2SO. You can tell by the weathering on his chest. It's the
That
same
was a
guy.
really creepy moment. I appreciated that
Yeah,
one.
that
Yeah.
means there was something a little different about that one. Maybe its programming was a little weird or it had a software glitch or whatever, but that's a foreshadowing moment as to that robot's a little different. So it's an Easter egg, I know, but I
well
found it interesting.
Gilroy actually did an interview where he talked about it, and he said that the original intention was it to be much more violent and focused
Yes.
on K2SO in
Yes.
episode 9. And
Yeah.
That's, I
I
think I
know,
read that. I think that's the thing I'm referring to.
yeah, yeah, which the whole thing was is to really build up this traumatic shift in personality
You know,
for
that would have been
K2SO.
much more interesting. I would have
Yeah.
liked to have had an episode of
Well,
building up his.
those KX droids were pretty brutal. I mean, they're throwing people 50 feet into
Yeah.
buildings and stuff. I
And
mean,
that, okay, so
Well,
that's
and
another thing, because now we're coming into Rogue One, right? And I'm sort of remembering bits and pieces of how things were operating in Rogue One. And K2SO was always wanting a gun in Rogue One, but yet
yeah, they wouldn't give him one.
in this last
Yeah.
episode, he doesn't need a gun. Good Lord, he's throwing people around like matchsticks. It's
I
like,
think
why?
that's
Yeah.
kind of their reluctance to trust that whole droid with a weapon is
Yeah.
very telling. So that kind of makes sense to me. That holds up. And
that
now
was a
I just don't know why he wants a gun when he doesn't really need it.
yeah.
well,
Well,
he's kind of
there's a whole missing element.
anthropomorphized into a person. You know, he's more like a person. He sees people running around with him. Maybe he wants to be more like
Well, I think it's also a trust thing too. He wants a gun because he wants people to trust him.
yeah,
So it's
maybe
kind of symbolic, I think.
like a
I
little
think there's
kid
something
wanting to
else
be
going
trusted.
on there that I think they did explore in the comic books that we didn't, that they didn't cover here. And the thing that I thought was a huge gap was that in the episode they just kind of show him there, and then there's on the table strapped down, and Cassian's there, and you've got the engineer, and the engineer sitting there saying, he was really hesitant about turning the thing on, and he just didn't know, and we didn't know, like, what the heck did they do to K2SO
Yeah,
that
they
broke
didn't
his
devote much
programming?
exposition to that. They
Yeah.
could have thrown some techno babble in there, but they didn't do it. They just pressed
Or
forward.
say
Well,
something that his programming was very unique. It wasn't like any other Imperial droid. This one shows the
Yeah.
special ability to exceed his something to give this a sense
there,
of why he's different
yeah, there
than
was some
any of.
mutations or something that would have been, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, he could have just said, looking at the code and gone, there's some weird viral anomalies in here, and I don't know if this is going to work or not. A throwaway line like that would do it, right?
That's
Well,
right.
this kind of touches on something that I was just very briefly mentioned to Legend Maker, and he had a really good analogy. It was the gaps when you hit the gaps. And I was talking about the gaps between the episodes, but this is a gap too. It's like they're just wanting us to accept it without understanding it.
Yeah.
And Legend Maker said it's kind of like a stone skipping across water, and that's kind of how it feels between the episodes. There's a lot of
Yeah.
stuff that you're trying to catch up the first, or acclimate the first 10 minutes of the episode to wait, what happened here? Where are we now?
Well, if
You
you think
know,
about it, the way that it's very clever what they've done, they've taken 4 years real time and compressed it into 12 1-hour episodes. and you're breaking them up where there's a year in between each. So those episodes are like a block of time through a few days in between 4 years. So you're compressing, a lot down into, just little bites.
That's
And I guess for me, the last three episodes have got to be action packed because you've
they
got
better
six.
be.
Well, you got six threads going on right now for
Well,
me in this whole story.
yeah,
You got the Gorman massacre, which is resolved. You've got Cassian's internal conflict. Oh, I'm going to quit. I'm leaving. You got Luthen's descent and his inescapable fate. You've got Mon Mothma's transformation and escape. You've got Bix and Cassian's relationship, which is essentially over now. And you got the Empire's story, which is them taking more control in an autocratic, brutal way. That's
I
really
just
what's
want to
going on
know
here.
when
That's a
Luthen
lot, man, to resolve in three
dies, who gets his spaceship? That's what I want to know.
No,
episodes.
I wanted there. So there, that was the
I
thing
want it.
when I said there were so many missed opportunities to really do something. That's one of the things. It's like there's not enough Luthen. He's mysterious. It's like was he a Jedi? We had hints all over the place about that. Like when they landed on Yavin, and it's like, okay, well, wait a second. Where did all these people come from? Who's organizing this alliance? How are they all
Yes,
showing up? Where
that's
Yeah.
one thing
huge
that
Yeah, you
popped
gap.
into
get the
my mind
impression
too.
it's a little loosey-goosey right now. Somebody needs to take charge, and maybe that's Mon Mothma now. I don't know.
Well,
That was
now
one
it
thing.
has to be.
That was one big question I had. It's like, okay, look, Luthen can't be driving the entire rebellion, and then it became clear
No,
he's not. So it's like,
he's
okay,
not.
yeah, just like Rex said, where are all these other people coming from?
Well, they did introduce, remember that rebel general that was in Rogue One? He showed up in these episodes.
Oh, the
Remember
guy
the
in
one who
the
gave him the
lineup when they were
assignment?
turning in their ordnance.
Yeah, I think he
Is
I
that
think
who that was?
he's going to probably turn into more of an organizing force because remember
What
he
was on?
admonishes him for taking the
She
ship.
mentioned. She mentioned, or wait, no, somebody mentioned Dodonna, in the dialogue.
Maybe that's who that is. I can't remember if
Yeah,
that's his character or
So wait, are
not.
we
I
yeah.
talking about
thought
that?
the
Oh,
the
go ahead.
Donna was the bearded guy with the long lab coat in Star Wars.
Yeah, I
So
think
oh,
he
wait,
was in charge of the whole setup on,
so then
on
we're not
Yavin.
talking about the guy at the very end where everybody had to put their guns on the table and Vel picked one up and said,
No,
who's is this?
That
And
no,
was
one
no, that
guy,
guy. Okay, that guy is a character. I think his name is Blish, and he was in season one.
Steve
And
Melchi.
he was one of the guys that got one of the weapons from Cyril's little police force on Aldana. The Donna what was the name of that planet. I cannot keep the planets, but he throws back to season one of Andor, and he showed up a couple of three times, and he's just a continuity guy who made it all the way to the Alliance on
oh,
Yavin.
That's
that's
right. He was
random.
he was Cassian's partner that escaped and got
That's
to the
right.
planet and said, "Hey, we've got to split up and we've got to go."
Oh,
That's right.
That's the
Like he
guy, and
got he got away
Cassian
from the
gave him the
prison camp
weapon.
too. So yeah, so he's kind of one of those. He's the wedge of this series, right?
well, they've
Right.
got to. I mean, they've got to start bringing in some more characters from Rogue One. I mean, they're getting too close
I think
now.
it'd be
Yeah, they
kind
Well,
of
got
cool. I
Galen, they
think it'd
got
be.
Jen Urso. There's so many others. We got to see
Mm.
Vader. We got to see more Krennic. We got to. I mean,
Well, we
well,
don't.
there's so much.
there's gonna be a Palpatine cameo
There
apparently
has to be. That was
before
You
one
the
of
know what
my
would be
holidays.
notes.
cool? You know, it'd be really cool is if we see Biggs join, because Biggs in Star Wars, he was just mentioned that he kind of ran off and joined before Luke did. His friend
Yeah,
That's
Biggs.
that's
that would
fan
be
service.
interesting.
That
Yeah.
all
Yeah,
that
well,
is that's just more fan
I
service
know it's
to
fan
me.
service, but
This
yeah,
what
that's
I
true.
want
I mean,
is
it's a fan service. Yeah, you're right.
all I want. This
But
was
we
the
are
thing is
fans.
I want there were these gaps where there wasn't enough time focused on how the rebellion factions were brought together on Yavin or how the Rebel Alliance is formed across them. Like who was the glue? How did all that happen?
Well, they
And
kind of
there
they
is a
kind of do
complete
that.
disconnect. But wait a
Well,
second, there was a complete disconnect with how things go with Star Wars Rebels. Like what about Kanan and Syndulla and all of that stuff. And then Thrawn, you got to remember, Grand Admiral Thrawn is active in this galaxy at this particular time period. And
Well,
it's like these are huge characters. And in fact, when you go, there was another continuity shift where immediately after episode 9, it lines up with an episode in Star Wars Rebels. I even wrote the note down. It's season 3, episode 18, called Secret Cargo. And that's where they actually deliver Mothma right after the speech there on Coruscant to them, and she
oh,
goes to the crew of from Star Wars Rebels with Syndulla,
Ghost.
Zeb, and
Is that that
Ezra.
other?
Hmm.
Is that speech they were talking about? She has to.
Yes,
Yeah. Okay.
yes, that was
And
that
she
was the
delivered
speech
it from
where
the
she said,
cockpit of their ship,
that's
right?
right. And she said,
Yeah.
"Hey, can we all just get along?" kind of speech.
Well,
And
that's
that
what's
was the beginning. But
yeah.
that was weird because I thought, well, wait a second, was that the one that I mean, all the rebels were already, piling up on Yavin, so where do
Well,
all
that
these other
probably
people come
happened in
from?
between episode 9 and episode 10 because it's a year in between those
No,
two.
no, it
And
happened.
that's
All of that happens before Mothma makes the speech in the Senate and goes on the run
Oh,
and starts the
well then
rebellion.
they skipped that
Yeah,
because
they did. That's what I'm saying. There's these big gaps, and the fact
well,
that Admiral Thrawn is in that episode chasing Mothma at the time,
yeah.
and they
Well,
haven't even
Oh,
shown me.
there's not going to be complete Marvel-like alignment on these things, I don't think.
Yeah, I was just, those were the things I just kept saying. I was watching through it, and finally got some interesting things in episode 9. But watching 7 and 8, I kept saying, you know what? I just need more Luthen and his cool Hall craft ship. Can you
Well,
just show me
they
a little bit
spent
more of that,
they
please?
spent a lot of time on the Gorman buildup. I mean, the Gorman's basically France in World War II. It's the French resistance, right? But
yeah,
the even down to the berets and the accents.
Yeah, yeah.
But
yeah.
the build up to that had a payoff for me, and that episode 9, when all that was going on, there were so many crisscrossing threads and moments that were good, and I went, "Oh, this has been very good." And I want more of that kind of thing in the last
yeah.
3 episodes.
Yeah, I have to say over all of this, we're sitting here sort of picking apart little things that we're like, okay, wish this had been better, wish this had been explained more. Just for me personally, it's like, okay, yeah, I can pick on these things, but I do want to say overall, I'm still enjoying the series very
Oh,
much.
it's the best
Oh,
Star
yeah,
Wars
yeah,
since Rogue One.
yeah.
I
I
think it's the
mean,
best Star Wars product since
Well, and
Rogue One.
especially the look. I mean, I just admire
Looks
some of
great,
the
yeah.
designs and the effects and stuff
well,
is
for the
just
millions
really
of
good.
dollars they spent on that, it better show up. But
Well, yeah.
I feel like that there was one thing about episode 9 that made me really uncomfortable, and I was just like, because when you look at it, you look at the setup, the placement of informants, the agitators, the influencers there, and then the manipulation and the twisting of the media to drive this false narrative. It was like, you
Yeah.
know, that really starts to feel a little bit close to what we've, hear about our world today, how you
Oh,
can't
that's no
trust it.
accident. Are you
Yeah,
kidding?
yeah,
They're
it was
making a commentary on today's
yeah,
world.
I know. And I was just like, okay, this is starting to really say stuff and reflect stuff that's not about the typical stories we hear about. Oh yeah, this reflects back to Nazi Germany. It's like, no, this actually reflects to what we're seeing today.
Yeah, they've
And
blended it
Well,
all
yeah,
together.
but they did that in Nazi Germany too. I
They
mean, that
did.
was, there was a massive amount of propaganda,
Well, his name was
control
Joseph
of the press and
Goebbels,
everything.
yes, and he was the minister of propaganda, and they
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah, yeah.
Well,
well,
there's a
that
Uh,
reason the uniforms look like Nazis.
oh yeah, and they behave that way and everything.
yeah.
Speaking
Um,
of, can we talk about I mean, I know we probably have what 30, 45 minutes and this is a lot to cover, but I wanted to bring up what I think is the most interesting part of this entire show. And it's not really Andor himself. It's the Cyril Daedra Miro relationship. And
You think
the
that's the
way
most
they
interesting
resolved
part?
that and
Ugh.
how close she came to dying compared to what happened to him.
Well,
And
I will say that his ending was abrupt, and it did leave me wondering because okay,
But we
so
should have said
well,
at the beginning,
first off,
there are spoilers in this conversation.
yeah,
yeah,
first
we need
off,
to
I
put that, by the
cannot,
way,
yeah,
in
for
our
sure,
intros.
I cannot see Cyril giving Cassian as hard a time as he did in that fight.
Yeah.
I
Well,
think Cassian would have mopped the floor with Cyril, is what I was
well,
thinking when I was
you
watching
have
it.
to think about it this way. The serial character has been building up and building up and building up since we met him to have an explosion of emotion because
True.
he's been messed up since birth, basically.
He's been used and pushed around, and yeah.
He
I totally get
finally
that.
lost
But
it.
here's the
Like
thing.
when
Here's a
that
question that I had. Here's a question I had. Is right there at the very end, right before he died, when Cassian turned and said, "Who are you?" And Cyril started to lower his
he lowered
gun.
the weapon, yeah.
Was he lowering the weapon because Cassian had just said the same thing that the Gorman leader had said to Cyril earlier, or was he having a change of heart at that moment?
I think the guy was having a complete existential crisis before the fight started. I think when it fell apart with Deidre and he found out she'd been using him for years, he was just in a state of total identity crisis. And when he asked him directly, "Who are you?" That was sort of that question that short-circuited his brain for a second. And
Well,
Yeah, he's basically saying that's a good question.
yeah,
yeah,
Who
that
am
was
I?
it.
And, and then a
It
blaster
was like
shot
a
short circuited.
thought. It was
Yeah,
a
yeah,
Then
that's
thought
right.
a
provoker.
blaster short circuited his brain for good.
That's
Yeah.
right. That was great. That was well written because to have it be that French leader that he had the argument with a few scenes before, that was perfect.
Sorry, Rex, I was talking
French
over you. What
leader.
were you about to say?
Well, I was, well, to that last point, it's so much for the theory that he's going to turn and be,
No, but
and help
Deidre
the
could.
rebellion out.
Deidre Marrow could. We'll see.
I don't think so.
She's struggling. That's for
Nah,
You
sure.
know what I think will
she
happen with
definitely
her?
had remorse, but she was willing. Her desire for recognition and promotion is just it overwhelmed her. She was, she's a good example of people who believe that the means justifies the end,
Well,
as long as it aligns with their own self-centered goals.
she had ambition, but there's a human in there somewhere scrambling around,
Yeah.
barely.
I don't
But
know,
I think
man.
what'll
I'm going
happen
to
to
say
her.
something. I'm going to
I'm
say
50-50
something
on
that's
her.
going to, you'll probably get mad at, but I was
Yeah.
glad that he died. I don't care about him. It's like, let's go back to the rebellion. It's interesting. It's not a bad story. It's just, I want to watch more about Star Wars, not
Well,
some
the reason
character,
they
you
explored
know?
his character so much is he's that missing thing we've never seen, which is why were people okay with what the Empire was doing if they're kind of neutral or gray?
They could have
Who's
done
the
that with
contractor
Deidre
Yeah,
that
by
but
put the
herself.
okay, but wait, I got a thought on that, Rex, and it came as a result of me realizing something I was thinking was wait, no, that's not right. Because I was thinking when I was talking about that stone skipping thing, there's a lot of details that get lost between the episodes, and we're like, wait, what happened? That could be answered, as I was thinking at the time, in context with the scrolling word thing, like they used in Star Wars. But then, after thinking, oh yeah, that would have been great, they could have just explained, well, in the last year, Cyril has done this and this and this and this with the
Yeah.
scrolling thing. But then it dawned on me, they departed from that in Rogue One. They started Rogue One to be something different, and that's what Andor has spun off of. So it is
yeah
actually following the pattern that Andor set for it.
it's a less fairy tale kind of story. I mean, it is
It's
tonally completely different.
I think they double click down on that too much. I would have loved to have seen more about Krennic and the security leader guy that you know Dedra reports to, his meeting with the Emperor and all of that internal play, and then the whole thing with the Imperial fixer who comes to the planet and really he orchestrates the conflict there with the
Yeah,
people
with
of
the
Gorman.
FAT, with
Yeah,
the
I would
sniper. Yeah.
that to me is much more interesting and much more reinforcing of the empire is evil and we need
Oh
to
yeah.
repel.
You
So
talk about the guys that were talking about propaganda.
No, we're talking about the sniper that shot the Green
Okay. I thought the
Imperial
propaganda
troopers
guys
and
were a waste of
basically
time.
ignited that riot. That was
Well,
all
it's
artificially
funny though. I
ignited.
was watching and I was
Yeah.
thinking, okay, there was the Gormans at that point were in a double bind. That was going to happen either way. I'm sitting here. I wish I
yeah.
had written this down. But the sniper, what happened was going to happen either
Oh yeah,
way.
that was a fait accompli. Because
Yeah.
one of the two was going to fire a shot off, and then that was going to be it. They ignited that tinderbox because they had a box of matches and they had
But they
doused
did
the gasoline.
Yeah, but they did make the effort to point out that the Empire did use a false flag. They
That's
knew
right.
they had a point, and
They did.
that it was to
And it
get
was
rid of the Gormans.
orchestrated. It was an
Yes.
orchestrated false flag. The commander who was kind of he told Dora
Scarface
that
guy.
yeah, you can do the strategy, but I'm tactical. And he was the
Yeah.
one that told those newbies that newbie troop go on out there
Yeah,
and
they were cannon fodder.
They were
Were
can. They were
nothing.
that's right.
sacrificial
Yeah,
lambs.
they
Yeah.
were
Yeah,
nothing more than a pawn piece.
that's right.
Absolutely.
He was the guy who was the expert and was the one who orchestrated the whole thing with the sniper and brought
Yeah.
in the stormtroopers
Yeah.
and the K2 units.
That was
So
all planned. Yeah. And
yeah,
then the fact that Cyril and Cassian are, these two characters who have kind of been on a collision course from the first episode are finally in the same spot. And they're literally just walking past each other. Was
Yeah, yeah,
great.
that was good.
And
That
then,
was good.
he's trying to take her out, and she comes within a whisker of being able to do it. And right as he's about to do it, he tackles him. That was great.
that was one scene that I loved the tension that was building up, but I really didn't like the way that they had that whole framing with Cassian trying to shoot her. I'm thinking, wait a second, dude, you're out in the middle where everybody can see you, and you're pulling out a little, telescope
Well,
Yeah,
you,
that
you
cross
have to
scope
sort
and
of allow for the
and
chaos
yeah,
around him and all that.
but it didn't
that
fit his personality. Like
that
he
crossed
was
my
so
mind too.
cautious. He should have gone up and stay hidden and just waited.
They
That
had
felt
a
more like
couple. They did a
Cassian.
couple of shots that lingered too long on
That
that.
would have been boring though, Rex. You got to have him out there taking the chance so we can go, "Oh my gosh, you're being stupid. Don't do that."
No, I would have loved to just keep it shooting, the scene keep jumping to him through the viewfinder, just waiting for her to pop up. And
Yeah.
as soon as he gets ready to pull the trigger, then something else happens. But for him to be ready to do it instead of just peeping around the column and looking through his little scope, is she there? No. Okay, well, let me look around more. Wow, what's going on? Oh, is she there? Let me look through my
Yeah,
scope.
yeah, that they dragged that out a bit. I mean, in terms of him not being noticed, I agree with you. That was a few shots too many. Yeah.
I kind
Yeah.
of agree
But
with that too.
I
But
did
at the
really
same
like
time,
when
they were building other threads at the same time. They were showing the chaos in the square and exactly what was
did you
going
like
on.
that scene? I really liked that bit where they helped Mon Mothma escape after her speech.
Yeah.
And they had that, that one sort of ISB spy embedded in the group that was going to get her out. And, the kind of one that looked like a mean German Fraulein. And that whole scene where he just shoots her. She's saying, she's trying to talk her way out of it. He doesn't even hesitate, he just shoots her. And then Mom Moth was like, "You shot her, I'm civilized." All that was great.
I liked the line, "I don't know if I can do this," and he says, "Welcome to the rebellion."
Yeah, that
Yeah.
was great.
Yeah.
Mhm.
All of that part I really enjoy. Everything on Coruscant
Yeah.
was really good.
That was very in character for Andor to do that. He's not a let me think about how to get out of this without shooting first. He's not. He goes
Yeah.
right.
He
Right
established
into
that.
He's an instinctual survivor.
He established that in the first 10 minutes of Rogue One. It was
Yeah.
like, okay, this guy's on a
Yes,
mission.
that's right. Yeah.
Well, and also Cassian Andor's superpower, I think. They used to say that the character Walter White in Breaking Bad's superpower was he could lie convincingly. I think
Hmm.
Cassian Andor can blend into any scenario really easily. He looks like like a fabric trader. He looks like a Imperial soldier in the heist that they did last season. He looks like a vagabond when he needs to. He really can kind of blend in the background, which is
Yeah,
A
he did
designer.
one thing that I think it was episode 7 that was starting to annoy me. Was that they just had him walking around like he was walking around out in the open, didn't have his head covered in Coruscant with Bix, and I kept thinking, wait a second, he's a wanted criminal.
yeah.
We're looking for him, and
Yeah,
he's just
I kind
walking
of thought
around.
that facial recognition thing that they'd be more careful, but
Yeah,
Yeah,
these
it's a
are
TV
the same
show. He is
people
the
that have
star. They don't want to cover his face up.
these are the same this is the same company that has Tony Stark walking around without his Iron Man helmet on when the rest of him's in full armor.
yeah.
It's like just providing everybody, okay, target. It's like
Yeah.
it's
Or
Yeah.
or
The
like
actor's
Pedro
got to show his
Pascal.
face.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah, having a
remember,
Mandalorian take his helmet off.
that's right.
Yeah,
Oh well,
I think that's all just, the real world meets logic, and you're going to have an actor's face shown.
I
That's
think
Okay,
his
why I hate those
actor's
movie.
ego.
That's why I hate those movie posters where you've got like the Avengers and they're all of their masks are off so you can see the actors instead of
Yeah.
the characters that they're playing. Really.
Well,
Yeah.
I've got sort of a sideways attachment question on this one just for fun, and that is okay. So you've got the scene where the KX units like walk in and just wade into the crowd, and they're just like they're devastating, right? Okay, so you got that scene, and then you got the scene with I guess I'll pick the one where Luke Skywalker is wading through the Dark Troopers. Which one of those two scenes, compare those two scenes in your mind to me, which one do you like better? I was really impressed with the KX units
Oh, I thought they were
appearance.
both very excellent, but I think the KX units were kind of shocking to me because I wasn't expecting them to hurl people 50 feet in the air
Yeah, the
into.
brutality was not, I didn't see it coming.
Well, and I kind of was expecting those guys to be brandishing weapons of some kind, to be
That's what
honest.
I thought. And they kind of diminished the whole role of the stormtroopers. It was like the stormtroopers were cleaning out all of the protesters, and
Yeah,
then the
they were kind
K2
of,
units were in there cleaning up. And
I think the
I'm just
stormtroopers were just kind of visual links. That's what they felt like in that one.
yeah, they felt
And they
forced.
actually hit what they fired at, which was really interesting.
Yeah, they're
Yeah,
from a different battalion.
yeah.
It's
Well,
like,
you know,
who are
one thing
these
that
guys
was
for the
did,
next 6 movies?
did you notice something? There was one thing that kind of I was like, what's going on? Was when K2SO was coming up and Cassian was shooting his blaster at him, and he just kept
Yeah,
shooting him, and it wasn't having
Yeah.
effect. But in Rogue One, when they were shooting him in Rogue One, the blasters were going through his armor, and I'm like, well, wait a second. First off, Cassian, why are you standing there shooting something that obviously can't be harmed? You need to get your butt and start running. And then the
yep.
second thing is, well, wait a minute, why are those blasters not making effect? But in the movie, he
Depends on
got
the
in.
caliber of the weapon.
Well,
Set your phasers
supposedly,
on.
Full
yeah, but
speed. Yeah.
no, there was something to where the blasters that he was using were super powerful. That's the one that he remember he's got it's kind of square on the end.
Yeah.
That's like the same one that
You
Han
know,
Solo
I
gave
think
to
that
Rey.
all of these
Super powerful.
logistical nitpicks are all reasonable and valid, but in the end, it's a narrative entertainment, and they're going to do what they're going to do.
Sorry, I just had
Yeah,
I had a a random rabbit trail moment when Legend Maker so that set your phasers. I was like, okay, that's the woke episode of Star Trek. Set your phasers on Shun.
oh
Yeah.
no, oh no.
Set your phasers on irrelevant or
Mhm.
illogical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So something else that kind of popped up that made me go, where's that at? I was so excited and just amazed by that the heist of the TIE Avenger in episode one. And that thing just kind of disappeared. It never really
Yeah,
came into any
yeah. You'd
factor.
you'd
And
think they'd have a little more story tie into that because
I
they
know
wouldn't have put
I
an
want to
episode
see
into it.
it, and I want to, just the whole kind of spaceship. I mean, every now
Well,
and
we
then
still
they kind
got
of had a
three
TIE
episodes
fighter
left.
fly by, but
Maybe we see that in somewhere in the next 3 episodes. Yeah, what do you guys think will happen the next 3 episodes? That might be an interesting topic.
Wait. Something just occurred to me though. Mental boy, did you really just say they should have had that tie-in more?
Ah, yeah, that's good.
Really? Come on, man. That's a cheap one.
Try
Sorry,
the
go
deal.
ahead.
I'll be here all week.
boom.
But okay,
Yep.
next three
Yeah, that's
episodes.
pretty funny.
Yeah, then these are the last three, right? This is these
Yeah,
next
there's
three are the bridge
basically 3 hours,
between
Well,
three
if
between
they're
45
the
minute
series
episodes.
and Rogue One. They got to make they
yeah, if
got to
they're doing
connect.
the countdown according to, I guess, the pacing, then we're going to be right on top of
Well, I think
you know.
we'll see Krennic again. Maybe we'll get a Galen Erso snippet. Maybe we'll get a
She's the elephant
Palpatine
in the room right
snippet.
now. I mean, if she is and she isn't. I mean, she was the main character, arguably, in Rogue One.
His
Um,
Well,
daughter. He was
yeah,
talking about Galen,
but at
her
the same
father,
time,
Caitlin
wasn't
or so.
she? Oh, I'm thinking of Jin.
yeah,
So,
yeah. I
but
don't know if we'll get
she was
any.
rescued. She was rescued in Rogue One,
Yeah,
right?
I
They
don't
had
know
to
if we'll
go.
get any Jin Erso. They may reference
Yeah, maybe
Galen
not.
Erso and
Well,
you know
there's a
what?
connection
I
with
think you'll
her
see.
and Saw Gerrera, so
He's the one
he's
that
been
rescues her.
introduced.
Yeah, Saw Gerrera rescues
Right,
her.
Yeah, as a
right.
Yeah,
child. Then
So
she gets
as a
captured
child. that's
Yeah.
already passed now.
So
I
there's a
mean, we're
whole
past
like
that.
there's a 12-year
That's
time jump
right.
after that. I mean,
True.
so
Yeah,
there's
that's
all
true.
kinds of stuff that's happened already. It's off screen, but yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot to do in 3 episodes, and I think just based on the way they've paced it, they're going to make it Cassian's story again, these last 3 episodes. And what's left for him to do? I mean, at this point, it's become a leader in the rebellion, right? To become a captain, because I don't think he's a captain yet.
Yeah, they'll
Well,
So
probably give him
remember
some mission or
they said,
another, and his
yeah, but
bonding
remember
with
one of the
K2SO.
guys said, "Hey, they're trying to promote you," but
Well, I
they
yeah,
thought
kept thinking,
yeah.
"Who?
I
Wait a
thought they
second. Who's trying to promote him? Is there a leadership
The
structure here? I thought
general,
just a
Dodonna
bunch
is
of
the
Dodonna.
leader of
factions."
this air. This part of the operation is led by
Yeah,
Dodonna.
it's the
I'm
guy.
positive.
It's the guy who's in Rogue One.
I
Same.
thought. Oh, wait a minute. I thought somebody in episode 9. I thought I heard somebody call him captain.
I don't.
He is a captain. He's a captain of a ship, but they wanted some other guy said, "Well, they want to promote you, but you
No, I
don't
got
want it."
that.
And yeah,
Who's gonna?
Yeah,
and I
Bell
Who's
kept
said
saying,
gonna?
that.
who's they? Who's they? Are these the people that,
Well,
hypothetically gathered all the different
to
rebel
me,
factions on
the
Yavin?
leaders are Luthen, Mon Mothma, Dodonna, and
Akbar probably.
to a
Yeah,
degree,
but where's he at?
He's on
There's,
to a
Naboo.
degree,
Somewhere.
Bail Organa.
yeah,
But
he's out
the
trying to avoid
I
traps.
yeah,
I was trying to figure out a way to work that in. You
it's a
beat me to
trap.
it.
Well, maybe it's Admiral Radis, the other one.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
that's even later. Well,
You have to remember, you guys are talking about, consolidating leadership, who's in charge of the rebellion. There's this scene in Rogue One that shows a lot of factions in the rebellion kind of arguing. Remember when Jen
yeah.
Erso pulls
Well, it's a
them?
fracture. It is fractured.
Yeah. So they're
Yeah.
never going to be like completely organized like an army. They're
well,
always
That's
going to
what
they,
be.
Saw. That's what Saw represents. Because in Rogue One, she was complaining about the fact that he's sort of like the splinter faction. It's
Yeah.
also kind of a rebellion, but it's not the same rebellion,
Well,
really.
he uses full on terrorist tactics.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, if
yeah,
they would have introduced more of the rebellion factions to us during this story instead of, diving down to someone with mommy issues, I
Yeah,
would have found that more interesting.
they allude to it, but they don't explore it like they do Cyril and his mom. I agree.
Yeah. Well, so there was another thing I thought, I'm not sure if what you guys thought about it, but what about that force healer stuff?
Yeah.
You know what?
That to
Force
me is just a little bit of mysticism peppered through here to, you know, tie it into broader Star Wars a
I
little
Yeah,
bit.
but
honest,
it
yeah.
never, it's not tied in. You don't ever see force healing anywhere else except there's one section in
You see it in the sequels in the last
Yeah, you
3.
see it in episode 9 a
that,
lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's right, but not up to this point.
No, no.
It's not, and
This
then
is
is
a
she a Jedi? What happened to the
Then that means they're
Jedi?
just trying to retrofit it in there, right?
yeah, they're
yeah.
retrofitting it.
They're retrofitting.
They're
I don't know.
making
That
Um,
whole
it
thing was
the
weird.
it
I
doesn't
they're making
necessarily have to be Jedi. You can have. There's lots of force sensitive people. Jedi is just an organization of extremely force sensitive people that you can get
yeah.
recruited into.
But to answer Rex's question specifically, I that scene felt a little unfinished to me when it was all said and
Mhm.
done. I was like, I needed a little bit more there
There's
to
been a
just tell
few
me what was
scenes.
going
There's
on,
been a few scenes like that where the writer's room maybe had too many post-it notes up on the
or just
wall.
not, or
I
just
think
not
they
enough,
had too
just
many
not enough.
agendas.
Yeah,
I
just not enough
that,
time to squeeze it
Well,
in.
there was a cringe moment there with that force healer that I was like, yuck. Where
What was that?
Wait,
she
how's
was
it go?
talking. You heard it.
Yeah.
She said she's sitting there talking to Bix, and she's saying how
He's the
he
messenger.
gathers as he go. He's a messenger. There's some place he needs to be, and then she says maybe you're the place he needs to be, and I was like,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. And then
Well,
she ended up
you got
leaving
to
him.
accept some touchy-feely in there.
Well,
Yeah,
okay,
but
but I see how that comes back in at the end because okay, so she is the place that he needs to be to find peace, and at the end that's deprived from him. So he will
Yeah, she
not find
leaves.
peace.
Yeah.
He will
I
not
think
find
you're
his
thinking
peace.
too much. I don't. I think you're overthinking it.
I don't
I
know,
think
man. It
it was
seemed pretty
weird.
straight. It seemed like a pretty straight connection to me.
I think
Yeah,
Phantom 6 is right on that. I think
yeah.
look, there's a desire to make this character, this Cassian Andor character, have a lot of depth and a lot of layers, and I think we're going to see in the next 3 episodes him kind of reach his potential as a leader in the Alliance, and basically just sort of setting up the premise that he can, in fact, take on the hardest missions, which is why they
Well,
give it to him.
there's one story plot that I feel like is going to stay and has to be really, I hope, but who knows, that we have to somewhere this group, Luthen or somebody, has to find out about the Death Star, has to find out that there are plans in the Imperial Vault. They
Yeah.
have to find some way to
Well, they'll
discover that and
probably
then bring them
allude to
all together.
Yeah,
Scarif.
that's
Well,
that's
they
coming.
learned
That's
that.
got to be.
Yeah, so that to me is the big story and the next thing for Cassian to do.
Well,
And
was it? Isn't Andor finds out about that in Rogue One? That's why he shot that guy. Right? Because am I
Yeah.
remembering that right?
Scarif comes up in Rogue One as part of the plot development there. But I do really, here's what I want to know with what's left in this show. How does Luthen die? Who takes him out? What happens to Deidre Mero? And with regard to Cassian and K2SO, do we at least get to see them go on one adventure? And that's what I want.
Yeah,
I
because we
think
all
they'll
know
probably
who
play that
doesn't.
up.
We all know who doesn't show up in Rogue One, right? That's something that's some pre knowledge that we have. So yeah, I'm kind of right there with Mensa Boys. Like, okay,
I think what happens is Deidre Mero gets assigned to the Death Star as a reward promotion.
I don't know. I don't care. I'm happy if they knock her off
no,
and
I
focus
know
on
what it
somebody more
is.
important.
Well,
That's who the Emperor has a child with that becomes Rey.
Yeah.
Ooh, yes.
That's nasty.
that's a soap opera scene I don't think I want to see.
Welcome to my chambers, my dear.
Okay, don't stop.
Lights
Okay,
off.
change course. Backpedal. Let's not go
You
there.
don't need that belt. It falls.
So,
Wait.
turn the lights off.
You don't need to.
You don't need those. Well,
Okay, this could go bad so fast. Let's
so
not.
hey, here's a little Easter egg or something that was there that I thought was kind of interesting. It was in episode 9, and it was Cassian was trying to get out there, and he was talking to the hotel desk clerk, and he says, well, I hope everything goes together or okay. And then the desk clerk tells him rebellions are built on hope. And I said, you know what? That sounds so familiar. I went and I looked it up, and
the Jen
exactly
Erso
what.
one.
Yep, that's what Jen Urso says to encourage the Alliance Council to finally attack the vault. So I
Yeah.
thought, okay, that's kind of cool. Somebody asked.
So it's some
little
kind of a
Easter eggs
saying that they must
sprinkled all
have that's been kind of
The
echoing.
thing that I just to the total aside, miniature minor thing. That that guy at the desk, that's the bellhop from the episode a few episodes back.
Yeah,
And I'm like,
yeah.
They aged him pretty well. I'm like, okay, he actually
they
looked older.
recognized he recognized Cassian, remember?
Yeah.
Because he'd been standing there talking to him when he was there before.
And he was sympathetic to him. He knew he was an operative for the Alliance. He just knew it.
Yeah.
But I guess, in French occupied Germany, they probably recognize the British agents.
Then here's the question: where did the desk guy get a hand grenade?
Oh, good point.
Well, he might have been part of their little resistance.
There you go. That's what I'm thinking. He had more connections than just being a desk guy.
Yeah.
Oh, he sure did. He sure did. Yeah.
I would say what I'm hoping is I would love to see more insight, with the Emperor scheming with the other Imperial leaders on where they go next. I want to see more
conference room scene.
Yeah, I want to see more conspiracy. You don't think so?
I don't, only because I'm sitting here trying to think before I say this, and I can't run through the entire movie, but we didn't get a lot of that in Rogue One.
Well, we know there's something going on at Jeddah, but there's something there, so they've got to find out. We know there's something with the crystals, so they needed the calcite at Gorman. They needed that for polishing the lens, and then something has to pop up where now they need the crystals. And so if they need the crystals that are on Jeddah, then there's got to be something in there where they try to pull the same ploy, or something has to come up, because that's already in play when we get to Rogue One. They're already on the planet, and the
that may be one of those parallel things that's going on that we just never find out about. I don't know. That's a lot. That seems like a lot to explain.
If I remember correctly, the crystals on Rogue One are power sources, or power focusing, but the calcite allows you to cover the lenses.
It's for polishing. Yeah, it's for polishing the lenses.
Right.
And
Hey,
the
Mensa
crystals
boy,
are to shoot the beams.
did you move away from your microphone, Mensa boy?
Yeah, he sounded a little farther
Yeah, you
away.
found something. Just yeah, keep going. I was just like, hey, come back to your microphone.
Speaking
Get
to the
back to your
mic.
computer.
Well, I would love for them to bring Admiral Thrawn in. He's too big of a character to just not, and he's out there, he's out actually chasing and looking at the rebellion. He's out around the Outer
Well,
Rim and
he's
he's
in
doing all
production
this.
on another show right now.
I know, but
His
you
feet's
know,
tied up.
yeah,
That
His
sounded
dance
funny.
card's full. He's got call days for shooting
yeah.
something.
But it would be interesting if there was some kind of nod or some kind of mention. Another interesting thing that is kind of an undercurrent right now in this time period. Princess Leia is actively involved. Remember, she is
That's
Yeah.
getting
true.
ready with
Yeah.
I
all of
wonder if we
the.
get a cameo from her. I don't know.
Yeah,
Good point.
remember what were the people she said a lot of what some species gave their lives to get these plans
Any
and
Bothans? Maybe she's
author.
working with Bothans.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And they
so
have already mentioned Alderaan for sure.
that's
Yeah.
right. Yep. And I always wondered why Alderaan out of all the planets, you think they might
Well,
have,
because it was Leia's world. He was trying to
Well, it
extort
was,
her.
yeah. Well, Bail Organa, a lot of it is probably him. Speaking of which, they recast him because speaking
yeah,
of
Yeah, I noticed
other
that.
contracts, the actor was on another contract. They couldn't get him out of it. So,
yeah.
But hang
I
on a
don't like
second here.
recasting.
I think there's a little connection there that just sort of appeared to me that we might be skating past a little, or y'all might have been just referencing this directly and that blew past me. So why Alderaan? Well, okay, that's where Bail Organa is from, and he's the one that supported Mothma. Now Mothma left. Bail Organa, he's gonna be stuck there. So
Well, he said he was going to stay on Coruscant, right?
yeah, but they know he's the one that gave Mothma the voice. And
That's
so
right.
Well, if
as
you
a
remember,
revenge,
they don't
as a
dissolve
revenge
the
thing, they
Senate.
blow up his planet.
Yeah,
It's
but
like, wow.
they don't dissolve the Senate until the Death Star is operational.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
That's Star Wars, right?
But
Remember he
this
Well, I'm
is
lost
just
kind of the beginning of the end of that. This is sort of like, with Mothma and her speech and that whole thing that's going on. It's really, the show is really beginning now. This is where the
well,
Empire makes its final
Yeah.
it
squish of
definitely
the.
there
you
used to be,
know,
I think, a voting body in Germany before Hitler was declared chancellor with full powers. And there's a reason they called Palpatine chancellor because Hitler was chancellor of Germany.
Yeah.
So
there's
Yeah.
also yeah, there's also
yeah,
something in there, another little minor thing that is like, okay, in the little goodbye video that Bix left for Andor, at the very end, she says, "I will find you." And of course, we all know, no, you won't.
That's right. Yep. I
So
actually said that when I was watching.
and
I
it's
was like,
so
"Oh no, you won't."
yeah, and so it's like
unless he
okay,
doesn't get killed.
what happens to her? I am willing to guess that we'll never hear from her again, and that character story arc is done within the context of this show. But I sure would like to find out how she reacts to the news that no, you're not, no, that ship has sailed. It's just like we're still going to find that out when Dedra finds out that Cyril's been killed. I mean,
I don't care. That to me is a loose end. I don't really care because she doesn't really play. I'd rather them take that screen time,
well, if
show some
if though
background for Urso and
if
what
she's
he's
gonna
doing.
if she's gonna flip, that would play into it. But I don't
Well,
think she I don't think
again,
she cared. I don't think she cared for Cyril that way. I think he was a pawn to her too.
yeah, I don't know. Well, one thing also that kind of popped out to me was when Mothma was escaping. They never mention what happened with her husband and her daughter, and
Hmm.
surely they got to know the Imperials are going to try to capture the family and use them as hostages, but they don't really.
Oh, yeah.
But
That's a good
but
point.
but dude,
Yeah,
that's exactly what in our last episode. That's exactly what I was referencing in that last scene when she's dancing. She's letting go of all of that, and so I'm not going to say it doesn't bother her, but at this point, I think she's let go of all of that, and so she's not concerned anymore. She's like, that's not my place,
Well,
and
I don't
Well,
know if
she's left her family obligations completely behind now.
I don't know. They show her with, in seven episode set. There was, I don't know. It was just the whole thing there was just odd and waste. I don't know. I mean, bringing in her family humanized her a little bit, but there was there was a little too much focus on it, and then she just kind of takes off, and she never says, well, what about my husband, what about my daughter, they're now exposed. It would have been a simple line where someone could have said, we already
Yeah,
got them, they're safe, that, and then game over, that's it. They
yeah, you know
Yeah,
what? That's a good point. I think
I
it's just
agree. I agree with
they
her.
wanted to
I
communicate what's
don't,
happening so
I don't,
fast, right?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I think as far as the rebellion is concerned, definitely as far as Luthen is concerned, her daughter and her husband are liabilities, and the less they know, the better.
Yeah, but they don't. But it
They're
doesn't
they're
matter.
they're
They're
fully
still
expendable.
exposed. Yeah, but
They're
they
fully expendable, so it doesn't
from
matter.
his point of view, but from her point of view, they're
Well,
her
she
family.
she's had to put all that aside. I mean, she can't have it both
Yeah,
ways.
that's what I mean. I
And
don't think
honestly,
she's.
I don't think she cares about the husband at all, but she does care about her daughter.
Well, I
And
think she did right up until that last moment when it became clear to her that her daughter was irredeemable at this point. Now, being
well, yeah.
being the father of a child, I don't think it's that easy to just turn that off.
Well,
But
maybe irredeemable. Maybe she just realized she couldn't really protect her, you know.
Or
yeah,
she just couldn't control that situation. She can only
Yeah.
control so much. And
I
think,
don't know. I think y'all are reading too much into it. I think the writers just missed that. I and
Wait,
maybe it
wait a
comes
minute,
up
Rex.
next.
oh
Where is
well.
your humanity? Where is your empathy?
Well, where's her humanity? Why didn't she, when they're escaping and she knows her life's
Right
on the
there on the
line, why
page.
didn't she
no,
ask, is my family safe?
look, it's a fair question. I won't deny you that it is a fair question.
You know what? I'm okay. And look, this is a weird backflip through a flaming hoop to try and take what is essentially a space fantasy premise and build on top of it a mature adult theme, political drama, which is what Andor really
Well,
is.
and yes, and here's the thing, and I was mentioning
So
this
there's going to
in
be
a conversation.
inconsistency.
As far as branches off of the main Star Wars, gosh, in in intellectual property,
Yeah,
um, there have been a lot of people, a lot of things that have tried to branch off of it. A lot of them unsuccessfully, particularly lately. And I think
yeah.
this one has, in spite of the not to take anything away from Rex's complaints about too much character development and not enough action. Okay, I get that, but I still think this one was successful. I
Well,
think it
yeah,
was,
because we're talking about it and we actually kind of care about these characters and they're interesting.
and couldn't give two
Now,
shits about Acolyte.
I don't think
Oh,
that you
no
guys
kidding.
are. I don't. Let me make sure you understand. I'm not against the character development. What I'm against is the focus and the limited time to focus on character development when there's so much more interesting areas that's more relevant to the broader story that they could spend more time and interest around.
I
That
yeah,
that's
I
that's a
don't disagree with
fair.
you. I don't disagree with you, but I think that in terms of what they think the audience is interested in is different from what you are interested in.
Well,
So
Well,
I
you
don't
know,
they
dis
are
Disney doesn't know who the audience really is. That's why
well, of
they
course they
failed
don't.
so
The
bad.
Disney's
So
I
lost.
just
Disney
I
leadership's
just
Well,
completely lost.
this is Tony Gilroy and his team, not Disney.
oh, but
yeah,
at the
there
same
I
time,
think they're.
don't
Kennedy had oversight. Don't you dare or fool yourself into thinking
No,
he
I don't
was
think
involved in that.
Kathy Kennedy's touched the show at all.
You th
I don't.
well, I don't
Quite
I would
good.
disagree with that.
I don't know. My perceptions on this are shifted because of that sort of that realization that I had. It's like this was built to be something different than the main Star Wars aesthetic.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
started that way, and it was intended to be different, And so because of that, I can accept that pretty easily personally.
I'm
Well,
not rejecting
I
it. I'm
think
just saying just poor writing story decisions that could have
I
made
think
the
I'm
show
not
so
saying
much
it's
more
I
interesting.
don't think it's poor. I think some of it could have been better. I'll put it that way.
Okay,
I
fair
think
enough.
overall the execution on this show has been tier one excellent. Sure, there's a missed opportunity here or there. Sure, there's some pacing here or there. But imagine trying to build a 12-hour movie, which is basically what this is, a mini series. Really hard to do
And
well.
the really
They've done a
ironic
very
thing
good
is
job.
Well, especially if you don't know the
yeah,
topic. They've got
imagine trying
writers
to
who
build
don't
a
like Star Wars.
imagine
Well,
trying to build a 12-hour movie, and then the flip side of that is imagine trying to cover everything that happens, from the beginning of the series
yeah.
to to Rogue One. There's a
Now,
lot.
it's
There's
ambitious.
tons that could be there. There's tons of stuff going on that we could never get close to. Well,
Yeah.
I'd love to see a series about Saw Gerrera, to be honest.
Yeah, I know. I think that's true. I know in Rex's case, he's kind of like, oh God, Cyril, Deidre, who cares? But to me, that's really interesting what they've been doing with that. Because
I'm in between both of y'all on that one.
You could turn it on to the afternoon soap operas and get the same effect.
but I here's the deal. If you're talking about adding some depth to the premise of why do people allow an evil empire like that to take control, and why are they so complicit? That's a really good insight as to why they get comfortable with being,
Well, it
comfortable.
was and it was a nice commentary on propaganda too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that was the big thing.
People love their confirmation bias, man. On both sides of the spectrum, they love their
Well, this
confirmation
is this
bias.
is to
Yeah.
me what makes it adult and smart is that it's layered and it's not just,
Like an
not
onion.
watching kiddie cartoon stuff like Acolyte or frickin' Skeleton Crew or any of that crap.
Hmm.
One of
Ogres
these
are
days, I'm
like
probably gonna have
onions,
to.
What'd you say,
layers.
Legend Maker?
Huh? One
What'd
of
you
these
say?
days, I would. Well, I don't know if we'll ever really get to it here, but it couldn't hurt to, for us to actually, review Acolyte and some of those that we.
Oh man.
I'm not
Ouch.
sure I could stomach that. I'm not gonna.
My
I'm not
review would be
sure.
very short. They suck.
Yeah, I'm not.
But I'd like to
That's
know
tough.
why. I'd like to pull it apart and find out and just understand.
Well,
No, that would be nonstop complaints and just
Wait a
sighs
minute.
and ughs and
Nonstop
meh.
complaints is what we've been dealing with for the
Hey,
last
hey,
couple.
we've
Legend Maker,
been we've been we've been debating merit, I
That's
think.
right. We're having
Legend
healthy
Maker. Hey,
discussion.
Legend Maker. I got a spoiler for you. Rex would have very low expectations for Acolyte.
Hey, let me tell you, there
Very
was one
low
thing.
expectations.
There was one thing in episode 9 that for me was the epitome of Star Wars, and I was just watching it and kind of had internal chuckles.
This
So
sounds interesting.
yeah, so
Yeah.
saw when first the soldiers come out in their black uniforms, and then the stormtroopers come out and they just start shooting and they're missing all over the place, and then a couple of these civilians reach out there and shoot one shot, hits a stormtrooper, and they're dead, and I'm like, okay, there we
Well,
go. They
so
can't hit
so
the broadside of barn, one shot, they're
no, wait
dead.
a minute.
Why are they
I
wearing
gotta
armor?
differ with you here because there were many shots of stormtrooper who gets hit, civilian gets hit, stormtrooper gets hit, civilian gets hit.
But what I'm saying is civilian doesn't wear armor. Stormtroopers do. Why are they dying?
Well,
Why
because
even wear the armor, you know?
so the whole premise of the armor deflects glancing blows, that was written up in a Ralph McQuarrie sketchbook concept, and they even called it impervium, I think was the name they gave it.
No, it's not.
It's
It's
That
more
went
impervious.
like
away really quickly.
it's more like
Impervious to what?
yeah,
Mosquito
no,
bites?
it's more like yeah, Swiss cheesium.
Well,
There's a lot of stuff, but no,
so there's
if I'm a stormtrooper and I'm looking over at those K2 units that are getting blasted and the lasers are just I'm like, I want one
Yeah,
of those
yeah.
chest plates, please.
Yeah,
yeah,
either I'm just like, I'm
we
out
have
of
a
here.
modern analog for
I am not needed here. I'm gonna go over here and not get shot at.
we have a modern analog for that in Kevlar that our soldiers have, right? And if you get hit with a direct hit with a 50 caliber bullet, it's still knocking you off your feet and maybe killing you, but it won't penetrate your body.
Yeah,
So
it's still doing damage. Don't get no,
I
there's
think if a
still gonna.
Yeah.
stormtrooper gets hit and goes down from a blaster shot, he may be alive, but he's knocked the breath out of him. You know what I
I don't
mean?
know. I just
It's
chuckled because they were missing and then they were so easily killed, and I was just like, oh boy, how many times?
as
Why
Yeah,
wear
but
the armor?
every single Star Wars movie and episode I think we've ever seen is inconsistent in that area.
Well, that's what I said.
Yeah,
It's the
the
epitome
good
of
guys
Star
always
Wars.
okay. All right, all right.
have.
So I was online the other day and I saw this little clip. It's a guy, he's standing in line at like a grocery store or like a Target, and the camera's on him, and all you hear is beep, 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 and the guy is noticeably getting more and more aggravated, and he's just like rolling his eyes, he's like, and you hear beep, beep, and then it switches to the cashier, and it's a stormtrooper with one of the scanning guns, and he can't hit the can't
Yeah.
hit the code to save his
Yeah.
life.
That's funny. That is funny.
Well, that that trope is very very good. But I got to tell you, just go back and watch the episode, and you'll see a lot of
Yeah,
gore.
no, there was carnage.
You'll see them
No two
getting
ways about
shot because they're all piled up at the end of the episode.
Well, the carnage was they shot their own person. And hey, you know what? There was one thing I had a note here. Okay, so talking about that Gorman massacre, the guy who was kind of orchestrating it all, they
Yeah,
called his name was Captain Kato or Kaido.
yeah.
Was he the one that raped Bix
No,
or
that
No,
tried to
that guy
rape her?
died.
she killed him with a socket wrench.
Yeah, she
Oh,
killed him.
so he okay, so he did die. Okay.
Oh, and he was a lieutenant. The guy in the black uniform with the dueling scar is a completely different character.
Yeah, the guy in
Okay,
the
because
black
I was
uniform
like,
was
is that
actually threatening. The guy in the gray one was just slimy.
That's
yeah.
right.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of weird. I thought, that would actually be an interesting connection because
But I
he
will say
was
this:
ruthless.
it's you're forgiven for getting them confused because they always have the same accent if they're an imperial officer, and the imperial sort of non-commissioned officers always sound like Cockney guys from the East End of London, and the stormtroopers always sound like Americans from Ohio.
Okay. Yeah.
In
Hey,
fact, the original stormtrooper voices, when they recorded them for Star Wars, Ben Burt said they found local disc jockeys in different parts of the California rural area and had them record the stormtrooper lines. So they're generic American voices, basically.
yeah.
They kept that through all these series and movies and stuff. You ever hear a stormtrooper sound like he's from New Jersey or Texas?
No, well,
Well, I mean,
being the
originally they were
British
all
Empire's
clones, right?
evil.
But once upon a time.
What was
Um,
that?
So I said
there,
originally they were all clones, but of course that's just that at the
Yeah, they all
beginning.
sounded like Tamura Morrison. That went away eventually.
Yeah.
there was something else that speaking of things that were very Star Wars to me and things that weren't. So flash forward to episode 9 where Organa is telling Mothma, hey, look, I'll stay here, you go or whatever, and she's like, oh, okay, and she was trying to find out who his crew was that he was setting up for
Yeah,
her to escape with. And
yeah.
he turns and, not only am I trying to adjust that, okay, this is a different actor, and I'm not even sure he was as good of an actor, but he said something that I was like, that's not in the Star Wars universe. Who came up with that? His line, and I quoted this here. He said he told or Bail Organa told Mothma, tear the shit out of
Yeah.
this place. And I was like, wait a second, when did shit come into Star Wars? It's always been
Well,
Vanderpoof.
Wait
Yeah.
a minute. Now let me answer that question.
Yeah.
I
Well,
can tell you
if
when
you-
shit came into it.
Remember the speech that Mira gave at the end of season 1 of Andor? Remember the old lady who was Andor's adopted mom?
Yeah.
She actually said "F the Empire" in that speech, and they changed it to "fight the Empire" at the last second.
Okay.
But
Yeah,
let me I'll just say as soon as they decided that Luke Skywalker was no longer a hero, that's when the shit entered Star Wars.
yeah, yeah. Well,
I
yeah,
could
no,
go back further than that to just a couple
Yeah,
of.
well, okay.
But
I-
That's the
I would
shittiest
say
shit, though.
yeah, I would say the end of the Lucas Star Wars or the Star Wars we grew and loved happened at the very moment that when Rey handed Luke her lightsaber and he tossed it over his shoulder.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
was symbolic of
That was the
tossing
end of it.
Lucas's out.
That
Yeah.
was,
That's
yeah,
when
that
I
was the
went,
end.
what the what, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that was just total bullshit. So,
Yep.
Yeah.
but
When
that's
that
for
happened, I was like,
another
okay.
that's for another Pondercast. How long have we been going now?
We're at
Probably an hour.
We're over an hour at this point.
Okay. Well, I think we've entertained people long enough.
Well, not only that,
Well,
but
we've at least definitely
got a lot of
entertained ourselves long enough.
Yeah. And that's all the only reason why we're doing this, right?
When you get right
Well,
down
if
to
we're
it.
going to wrap it up, then I guess the next Pondercast from us will be number 3, which will be the final 3 episodes of Andor Season 2,
Yep.
which will be 10, 11, and 12, and we'll see how all this resolves.
And then after that, we're gonna come up. We'll have all different other interesting topics.
Yeah,
This
we're
this
gonna
have-
podcast is not about just Star Wars. There's
Then
a
we're
lot
gonna
of
have to,
other.
yeah, we're gonna have to
of
figure
other
out what else.
geekery.
We're gonna have to figure out what else to complain about.
Well, look,
No,
if you enjoy hearing 4 old geeks ponder, click like, subscribe,
Yeah.
click the bell, and we'll see you next time.
Peace out.